All right, today we're jumping into a chapter from Christina Hoff Sommers' book, Who Stole Feminism? The chapter is called The Gender Wardens, and it gets into what she says is this huge split, this deep division right down the middle of the feminist movement. So let's just start with this pretty edgy quote that Sommers throws right at the beginning of her chapter. She uses this old joke to set up the whole point she's trying to make, that a certain wing of feminism has become so rigid, so ideological, that it's kind of lost its sense of humor and, in her view, is really out of touch with everyday women. And to really hammer this point home, the book kicks off with this wild, true story. It's about a single moment that sparked two totally different reactions from a feminist audience, and it just rips open what she calls a major fault line in the movement. So picture this. It's Mother's Day, 1992 in Manhattan. A columnist named Asa Baber is giving a talk to about 1,000 feminists. He gets up there and points out something kind of simple. On Mother's Day, the phone lines are totally jammed. On Father's Day, wide open. And he asks, why is there so much less interest in fathers? And the reaction from this crowd? They laughed, like uproarious laughter. The place went wild. Baber himself was totally confused. He even wrote later, "At first, I didn't get it. I thought my fly was open." But then, just like that, the whole vibe in the room just flips. Baber goes on to say that the fact that fathers are so out of the loop is a major tragedy in our culture. And I mean, the laughter just dies instantly, and it's replaced by hisses and boos from the outraged crowd. So what happened there? How do you go from roaring with laughter to booing in like 10 seconds? For Sommers, this little moment is everything. It's the key that unlocks this much bigger story about two totally different ideas of what feminism is supposed to be. And that brings us to the core idea of her whole argument. Sommers says there are two different schools of thought here, what she calls equity feminism and gender feminism. And her point is, they're not just a little different, they're basically at war with each other. So here's how she breaks down that clash. On one hand, you've got equity feminism. The goal here is pretty straightforward. Full civil and legal equality. You know, the classic feminist goal. It sees women as strong, capable people who know what they want. And then on the other hand, there's gender feminism, which has a much more radical aim, to completely overhaul society and even to change what people desire. In this view, women are basically products of a system that forces them into roles, and often, they don't even realize it. And to really show you what she's talking about, what this perspective looks like in action, Sommers points to this really powerful quote from the famous philosopher Simone de Beauvoir. Someone told her women should have the choice to be homemakers, and de Beauvoir reportedly shot back, no, because too many women will make that one. This really gets to that core idea that some choices women make are just not the right choices. And this gets us right to the philosophical heart of it all, this big debate over what's an authentic choice. The book argues that this gender feminism is built on the idea that a lot of the things women typically like or choose, well, they aren't really their choices at all. They're just pushed on them by society. The big idea here has a name: false consciousness. Basically, it's the theory that a whole group of people can be tricked by the dominant culture, in this case the patriarchy, into wanting things that are actually against their own best interests. So what does that mean? It means if a woman makes a choice that doesn't fit the ideology, well, you can just dismiss it. Say it's not authentic. Okay, so how does this play out in the real world? Well, Sommers uses a perfect example from pop culture that I think everyone knows, that famous staircase scene from Gone with the Wind. The question is this: when Rhett Butler carries Scarlett O'Hara up those stairs, what are we watching? Is it passion or is it assault? And this is where you can really see that divide in worldview. The gender feminist take? It's rape, no question. It's about domination, and it's a dangerous example of our culture making violence seem sexy. But Sommers points to a survey of actual female fans of the movie, and their take was totally different. They saw it as mutually pleasurable rough sex. They called the scene erotically exciting, and they pointed out that the next morning, Scarlett is clearly enjoying the memory. Right, so it's not just about how you see the scene, it's about what you think should be done about it. The philosopher Sandra Lee Barkey says that this fantasy of being carried away by Rhett Butler, it should be traded in for one in which we seize state power and re-educate him. The goal here isn't just to critique desire, it's to completely overhaul it, to re-educate people out of having the wrong fantasy. So, okay, this all sounds pretty academic, right? A theory. But how does it actually affect things in the real world? Well, Sommers argues this is where the gender wardens come in, basically enforcers of this new code who try to manage the culture that women see and read. And she lays out this step-by-step process of how it happens. First, the ideology decides that certain desires, certain types of art, are just incorrect. Then that trickles down. You see editors pressuring authors to change their characters. You see art exhibits getting taken down or changed. And it can even get personal, with people getting called out for their own private expressions. And the book just lists example after example to back this up. We're talking about romance novel editors trying to get rid of the whole alpha male hero. A poetry editor literally admitting she just blacks out parts of a poem she doesn't like. A famous painting by Goya being yanked from a classroom, all the way down to a grad student being told he has to take down a picture of his own wife in a bikini from his desk. And the book really stresses that a lot of this pressure is coming from inside the movement itself. It quotes writer Pam Houston, who basically says that because of all this policing, women are silencing each other, and we are doing it so effectively that we are even silencing ourselves.
So, wow, where does all this leave feminism? Well, Sommers wraps up this chapter by framing this whole thing as a huge battle for the very soul of the movement, which she believes is at a serious crossroads.
Her big point is that this highly ideological group, these gender wardens, are pushing away the very women they're supposed to represent. Why? Because they're basically telling them that their lives, their choices, and their desires are fake, that they're just brainwashed. But she actually ends on a pretty hopeful note. She believes that what she calls equity feminism, that straightforward fight for basic equality and fairness, that's the real deal. And she believes it's going to stick around long after these, intellectual fashions have come and gone. And that really leaves us with the big, tough question at the heart of all this. In any kind of social movement, who gets to decide which preferences are authentic enough to represent the whole group? And what happens when the people in charge decide that the preferences of the majority just don't count?